Slinging Stones is claiming that the tomb of the giant Gilgamesh was discovered by Stargate in Iraq while they were searching for other existences going on. And that reminds me of Rob Skiva claiming that Gilgamesh is actually, guess what? None other than Nimrod. And Nimrod is going to come back to life, according to him.
Why did the United States invade Iraq? Falling buildings, oil, weapons of mass destruction, or maybe it wasn't any of these reasons. One theory suggests that Iraq was in possession of a Stargate first used during the time of Nebuchadnezzar. There's also evidence that they had knowledge of the giant Nephilim Gilgamesh and his tomb and ancient artifacts with supernatural powers. The 2003 invasion of Iraq was a military action led by the United States and its allies, which resulted in the toppling of President Saddam Hussein's regime. In the years leading up to that invasion, Saddam Hussein had an obsession with rebuilding Babylon and being the next Nebuchadnezzar.
Really?
Inside the abandoned Babylon that Saddam Hussein built. In the 1980s, during the Iran-Iraq War, Saddam Hussein became obsessed with the Babylonian ruler Nebuchadnezzar, who's notorious for waging bloody wars to seize large swaths of current-day Iran and Israel. Saddam saw himself as a modern reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar, and to prove it, he spent millions building a massive reconstruction of Babylon. Here's where the Stargate theory comes into play. While Saddam Hussein was rebuilding Babylon on his journey to be like Nebuchadnezzar, there's theories and claims that he had found the location of the fiery furnace told to us in the book of Daniel. King Nebuchadnezzar had invaded Israel in the year 589 BC. After the attack, he had taken back to Babylon 3 very faithful followers of God, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. One day, King Nebuchadnezzar made a decree that when a horn blew in the land, everyone had to go and bow and worship the image of Nebuchadnezzar. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego disobeyed this order and would not worship the false idol. This led Nebuchadnezzar.
That's crazy. So where is it going at? How in the world can you even find Nebuchadnezzar's fiery furnace? That's literally so hard to believe. But according to this, all right. So he then claims that they have found the burial tomb of the giant Gilgamesh.
The United States invaded Iraq, but theories that Iraq has possession of evidence of Nephilim or ancient supernatural artifacts or the tomb of Gilgamesh has a lot more evidence to back up those claims.
Whoa.
It's disturbingly easy to buy Iraq's archaeological treasures. US forces invaded the country 15 years ago this week and left behind a booming trade in looted artifacts. When the United States invaded Iraq, there's claims that one of the first things that they did was raided museums and locations that had ancient artifacts. Iraq War. When Baghdad fell, the country's treasures were lost. US forces failed to protect Iraq's cultural heritage after the 2003 invasion, leading to thousands of artifacts disappearing. It happened early in the US invasion and quickly. On the 10th of April 2003, the first looters entered the National Museum of Iraq as American troops advanced into Baghdad. Over the next 36 hours, these thieves ransacked the institution, which was founded in 1923 and dedicated to preserving the country's vast heritage.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of that stuff that happened within the Bible is in the Middle East around that area. So that's such a mind-blowing thing to think that the US had a part in that. And he claims that like a lot of them were looking for nuclear bombs, but they didn't find anything. Were they looking for something else, or was this just a scapegoat?
New York Times called the looting of the museum and its invaluable collection of archaeological artifacts, many of which dated to the early days of human culture and civilization, one of the greatest cultural disasters in recent Middle Eastern history. Though the museum staff were able to safely store over 8,000 artifacts with little external support, still more than 15,000 historical objects disappeared within 2 days.
Wow.
A lot of testimonies have come out by people engaged in the initial invasion, saying that archaeologists were present with the military. Multiple testimonies have stated that when entering these museums and other locations housing artifacts after the initial raid, showed that the artifacts made of gold and silver with high monetary value weren't taken. It appeared that they knew exactly what artifacts they were after, and these may have had supernatural origins. One of the main things the military may have been after was discovering the tomb of Gilgamesh, a Nephilim offspring of the fallen angels, who was said to be 17 feet tall. This might sound like a wild conspiracy theory, but a Freedom of Information Act connected to Hillary Clinton's emails in 2018 had a very peculiar email within its pages, requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body, and the location of the buried Nephilim.
Stop. No way. That can't be real. That's insane. It's so weird that the government seems to have their hands in all these spiritual and in disturbing things, but then they play it off as if you believe in any of this stuff, you are like one of the most lunatic, crazy persons out there. Man.
Gilgamesh was a hero in ancient Mesopotamian mythology. He was also the historical 5th king of the Sumerian city-state of Uruk. Gilgamesh was viewed as a god and ruler of the city-state Uruk, and depictions of him show that he was a giant, famously holding a lion like you would a normal house cat.
Shoot.
People have sought out supernatural powers since the beginning of time. Locating the tomb of a Nephilim like Gilgamesh may have been the reason why the United States invaded Iraq.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But now I want to go to Rob Skiba identifying the Antichrist from scripture.
So we're going to pick up where we left off.
But he identifies him as Nimrod. Now we're getting to the meat and bones of the situation, where he explains who he thinks Nimrod is, and if he thinks Nimrod is the Antichrist, and if he thinks that Nimrod is Gilgamesh.
One of the titles used for the Antichrist throughout the Old Testament is the Assyrian. Which one fits that title? Only one. Nimrod. So by process of elimination, we've landed on Nimrod. Now, one of the names Nimrod became known by was Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, there's a number of different versions of the Epic of Gilgamesh. The way I look at Gilgamesh, I have a book on Sumerian myths and legends by Stephanie Daly, I think was the author, Cambridge, I think, Press. She was saying that it was understood that the Epic of Gilgamesh was a fictional story, what we might consider a blockbuster movie of the time. And a good orator, a king, if he's going on a long journey with his troops, they would hire, the local Shakespeare, somebody who could tell a good story, and they would entertain the troops, when they had their downtime. And a good narrator or a good orator knows his audience. And so they would embellish the story, maybe even include the king that he's with as part of the story, or local legends or whatever. He would tailor the story for the various people that he was telling the story to. And so you had different versions of the Epic of Gilgamesh. So if you think of the Epic of Gilgamesh is like a blockbuster movie scenario, we could say, well, Harrison Ford is Han Solo. No, he's Indiana Jones. No, he's the President of the United States. No, he's a fugitive. Well, he's all of those things, right? One actor played many parts. So think of Gilgamesh as a fictional story in the Harrison Ford scenario, but instead of Harrison Ford, we're talking about Nimrod, right? One of the quotes from the Epic of Gilgamesh is, "Who can compare with him in kingliness? Who can say, like Gilgamesh, I am king?" Not exact, but pretty close to the same awe that people have reflected in Revelation 13. So there's...
Dang. It's so crazy his conclusion is wild. Because eventually he's going to say Gilgamesh, they found the tomb of Gilgamesh. But it's not in Iraq. It's in, I believe, Egypt.
Similarity there, but let's continue with this premise. Comparing Nimrod with Jesus, or Yeshua. Gilgamesh was said to be a God-man, right? You know, we know that Yeshua is the Son of Man, but he's also the Son of God, right? In the case of Gilgamesh, he's 1/3 man, 2/3 God. Well, 2/3 of
Wow.
66.6%.
Oh.
1/3 is what? 33.3%. 33 comes up an awful lot in occult circles and Freemasonry and secret societies, most of which the rituals go back to this guy right here.
Dang.
Osiris. He was one of the only other gods of antiquity besides our God who was known as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords in the pyramid texts and the Book of the Dead, etc. Osiris, Mithra, Tammuz, these are various characters whose symbol was the cross. In this case, the Ankh, which actually predates the cross. The hoop of the Ankh represents resurrection. So there's this symbology already right there of a dying individual associated with a cross who rises from the dead. In numerous depictions of the various sun gods of antiquity, he's a dying and resurrecting figure. Apollo. In the case of Apollo, he's the son of God, the son of Zeus in that case. He rules from elsewhere. We know Yeshua is in heaven, right? We're his body here on earth. His head is in heaven. He's the head of the church, as it were. He is in heaven. His body's in heaven. Our body's here. We're the body. He's the head. In the occult, it's the exact opposite. It's the antithesis. You have the Horus and those who worship on the surface, and you have the Osiris, who's the ruler of the underworld. So it's an exact opposite in that scenario. We have the name of the Antichrist, the beast that comes out of the bottomless pit, given for us in Scripture in Revelation 9, verse 11. 9:11. Interesting. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit. Where did the beast come from? Okay. Whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon, which is a derivative spelling of Apollo. Same character. So it just told you who the Antichrist is. It's Apollo. And when you realize who Apollo is, and you start looking at the synchronicities of various mythologies, you realize, you know, the Greeks are just borrowing from the Egyptians, who are borrowing from the Sumerians and the Babylonians, etc. And the Romans come along and borrow from the Greeks. Everybody's borrowing from each other, taking the, you know, all of a sudden Zeus becomes Jupiter, and, you know, they're taking the gods of those who came before them, renaming them in their own language and assigning attributes to them, and sometimes keeping the attributes borrowed from the other cultures. All right, so Apollo is the name of the Antichrist. 666, we all know about the number of the beast. We said that he was 1/3 man, right? Well, man is a carbon-based organism. The carbon molecule consists of 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons. So just by default, man's number would be 666 by the carbon molecule. 2/3 God, 66.6. The Washington Monument represents a phallus. The obelisk in antiquity is a representation of the 14th piece of Osiris that was not found, that Isis fashioned in order to impregnate herself. So this is
crazy stuff. Because, yeah, Osiris was killed and was cut up in 25 pieces and spread out all over the world, I guess. And Isis came and found 24 pieces and had to make up the 25th piece to get Osiris to come back to life. But he's putting all these things together. 666 is the number of the man. It's a man number. 777 is the number of God.
Object right here in our nation's capital, sticking up like a middle finger to God. And it's the largest phallic symbol in the world, standing at 6,666 inches tall by 666 inches wide at the base.
What? Is that
when
true?
we talk about Nimrod, just by way of review, in my Teaching the Mythology and the Coming Great Deception DVD, these are just some of the names that he became known by. There are many more. For the purpose of this talk, I'm going to focus on the ones in red: Gilgamesh, Orion, Apollo, and Osiris. Because some very interesting things have happened in the last few decades. They found the tomb of Osiris in 1999. Dr. Zahi Hawass is one of the most...
So they found the tomb of Osiris. So it is in Egypt.
Renowned Egyptologists out there. He said, I have found a shaft going 29 meters vertically down into the ground, exactly halfway between the Chevron Pyramid and the Sphinx. At the bottom, which was filled with water, we have found a burial chamber with 4 pillars. In the middle is a large granite sarcophagus, which I expect to be the grave of Osiris, the god. I have been digging in Egypt's sand for more than 30 years, and up to date, this is the most exciting discovery I have made. This is what they found.
Wow.
They, where the red star is between the middle pyramid and the Sphinx, that's where they found this opening.
And that's crazy because someone said that they're gonna in 2026 in Easter that the Sphinx is gonna show something very, very sus. So
Years I thought
yeah,
it's a well, a watering well, because it was an opening that had water in it, and you know people would play in it or do stuff in it or whatever. For whatever reason, they said let's pump the water out and see what this thing really is. So they pumped the water out, went down into this antechamber there, and they walked around, found another opening, and went down, and they found an area that had 6 sarcophagus and another opening, a 7th one. How many heads did the beast have? 7. 6 and 1, right? So you had 3 here, 4, 5, and you went down into the other one down here. So they went down there, and this is what they found. They found, this is an artist's rendition of what they found. Basically a square island that had water going around it, like a moat. They had 4 pillars on it. They had writing on it that I suspect were instructions for how to use this chamber. And then you have another moat surrounding an island that had a very large, I think it was about 10 feet long sarcophagus. The lid was open and there was a body in it. So like the lid was ajar, it was off to the side, and they found a body in it. And everybody, after they examined it, determined this is not Osiris. Very likely it was somebody put into this chamber, probably with the hopes of being resurrected.
oh, whoa.
Could this be a resurrection chamber, I think is the big question. And it didn't work, apparently. The person was still there.
That's crazy, guys. So very, very fascinating stuff. I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments below. That is for sure. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. Always remember, guys, Jesus loves you.